So, hello and welcome to another episode of the Odd Fellows Oddcast. And joining me today is brother, past Grand Master, past Grand Patriarch, Peter Sellers. And he is going to be speaking with us today about different Odd Fellows swords. Peter, I think that the swords don't really come into play with anything with Odd Fellows, correct me if I'm wrong, until you are involved in what is called a canton. Is that right?
Yeah, today it's a canton. They used to have swords in the encampment.
Uh-huh.
And then we established the canton, I believe, in the 1870s. I have the exact date here. But we established a canton through what was in our Sovereign Grand Lodge in the 1870s. And the swords were exclusively used by the canton since that.
Now, I remember you telling me something about how it is that 1870, when the cantons were started, and by the way, cantons are an extension of like the encampment. Is that right? So,
At that time, it was more of an extension. Yeah.
mhm.
Now you don't have to necessarily belong to the encampment
Mhm.
to join the Patriarchs Militant. As of a few years ago, the Sovereign Grand Lodge allowed a member to go directly from a lodge to a Patriarchs Militant.
Okay, perfect. Now,
And
1870, that was shortly after the Civil War. And I seem
yeah,
to remember that you told me that there were a lot of Odd Fellows who were veterans of the Civil War.
yeah,
And they have had a lot of their own Civil War swords that they kept after the war, and that they were interested in forming something that would allow them to um, be in uniform as Oddfellows together. And do you want to pick
yeah.
up on that?
Yeah, some of this is oral history, but it's been substantiated when I was doing my research for the Civil War book I wrote about the Odd Fellows. I went into books like this from 1880s, The Patriarchs Militant. This is a very rare book, and
Nice.
I will read the obligation in a few minutes, what the Patriarchs Militant uh, was tasked with.
Hmm.
But members right after the Civil War, and this is well documented in minutes, members after the Civil War had this sense of camaraderie. And what they would do is and they wanted this brotherhood. They were tight during the Civil War. And when they would come to lodge, often the only clothes they had, and some just didn't let it go, would come to lodge meetings. Those veterans would come to lodge meetings in uniforms,
Hmm.
wearing either their trousers or their blouses or their tops. Some would come in their caps and remove them when they came into the lodge. And that was also at a time when some members. I know I digress a little bit. Sorry, I digress a little bit. But sometimes you get members who came there who have lost their right arm,
Hmm.
and they couldn't do the sign with their right arm, and that was a big thing back then. They had to have the Grand Lodge of the United States, which is now the Sovereign Grand Lodge,
Hmm.
approve these guys coming in who could give the signs with their left hands
Hmm.
and their left arms. So that was a big deal. Like the members coming to lodge in their uniforms.
Hmm.
Uh, and some would actually carry other remnants from the war. Some would carry canteens. Some actually brought their swords, and they would get together. And it was felt a group should be started. And they made it allowable in the encampments where these guys could come in uniform.
Hmm.
And that's how it kicked off.
Now,
It kicked off in the encampment first. And so many wanted this. It was such a demand.
mhm.
By 1870, you had Sovereign Grand Lodge approve to have the uniform, but they said it would be done in the Patriarchs Militant.
Hmm. Now, I got a question for you about this, and I don't know if this is just fanciful thinking or not, but it kind of makes me wonder if these guys were really interested in showing up in lodge in their uniform. whether or not it may have had something to do with the fact that that was the nicest outfit that they had. Because I remember seeing a lot of pictures of Oddfellows from, way back when photography started, and these guys were, very well dressed. And I remember seeing pictures of, Oddfellows as long as, like, 50, 60, 70 years ago. And it's very common to have guys in jackets and ties and tuxedos. So, I would imagine that because Oddfellows was much less casual, much more, less casual than it is today, far more formal, that maybe uniforms were like their best outfit. I don't know. Is that maybe?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Remember, I'm working on a book now, The Gold Rush,
Mm,
the Oddfellows during the Gold Rush. You can also see old pictures of guys coming in in work clothes,
hmm
taking these group photos, and probably the best clothes they had.
hmm,
And a uniform could either be seen as something um, not the best clothing because some of it was
hmm
worn out, or you could see it as, if they're in full dress, as being something very nice. You're correct, but Odd Fellowship covered the spectrum of members. We
hmm
were called the poor man's Masons
hmm
at one time, and where we admitted more members across the board. Members came here to California to mine for gold, for example. The only clothes they had at that time, many became poor or were poor, but they were members of the order and they would show up. And sometimes you see those images with them in disheveled clothing, as well as you do see members in well dressed. You see them in well dressed clothing. So
hmm
I think you can take that across the board. I think the photos that have survived, most of them that have survived, are the well dressed members. Maybe they didn't want to have that image of member, but like I think we're pretty much the same today, but we're less formal. Even in my time of being in the order for 30 years, 30 plus years, where I used to come to most of the events like installations, for
hmm
example, or Grand Lodge in tuxedos. If
hmm
you were an officer, we came in tuxedos, in the lodge tuxedos even, and many lodges wore sport coats at the
hmm
very minimum, ties and others. We have pulled back a little bit, especially in this jurisdiction, where members come in. They come clean, but they're dressed down
hmm
quite a bit. Yeah, there is a change, and I imagine uh, that was the same back in the olden days. Not
Yeah.
We didn't have all the judges. We talk about our judges, governors, everybody's served in every capacity, but we also had very poor members in
Mhm.
this order. It's just who they accepted, how they accepted you, and who they accepted.
Yeah, I know that, this comment about like being the poor man's Masons. I know that one of the differences, we did a session before about the differences between Oddfellows and Masons, and one of the big differences is that the cost of membership annually, as my understanding is, for Masons is much higher than it is for um, Oddfellows.
Yeah,
And
your annual dues could be 200 in some lodges, and to get in could be up to 1,000 to 1,300, depending which Masonic lodge you're going to join.
Mhm,
And it's a little bit more ritualistic. You're going to have to do more memory work like we used to do here. Even I had to do a lot of memorization here in the Oddfellows. Now, when I say we're not the poor man's Masons, I don't mean that as degrading.
mhm.
I don't mean that in a bad way. Sometimes that's a refreshing way because
Yeah,
it's more of
agreed.
acceptance of everyone.
Hmm
Oddfellows accept women in the lodges. Oddfellows accept, I think, more of a spectrum. I think that's more realistic of how we interact with society.
No, I
I
completely
like
agree.
I like that aspect about Odd Fellowship.
It makes it more accessible.
I understand the Masonic
Hmm
view too, and I like that view as well. I mean, if a person wants to do that, great. If a person wants to do this, they have choices. You want to join the Odd Fellows, you want to join the Masons, and nothing says your Odd Fellows can't dress up either. I mean, you can come to a lodge meeting in a sport coat. I used to think that was cool. I think El Dorado Lodge number 8 in Sacramento, they used to wear gold blazers just for the meetings. They have them at the lodge. They put them on for the meetings. I
Nice.
think Sacramento Lodge wore a burgundy blazer. Sacramento number 2, they would come to the meetings in their blazers. It looked sharp when you see them show up at the conventions. You could tell which lodge by the color blazers. And I always saw it. And there was one that wore a light blue blazer as well. So I always liked that idea too. Just something I'd put on a blazer if somebody asked me. I do it anyway. I dress up, coat, tie. I wear tuxedos when I'm at events. I still do that. It's I don't know. I don't get a lot of opportunity to do that, but I still do it. And if any member wants to.
No, yeah, I completely agree. I was going to mention that the cantons also had a bit of a change where you, at a certain point, and I don't know if you know exactly when it was, but you didn't have to have a uniform, like a military uniform, at a certain point, where there was an alternative to having a full dress uniform. Yes?
Yes, you can wear like we used to call our Charlies in the Marine Corps, because I know you were in the Marines as well, and our short sleeve Charlies. Yeah, those are allowable.
So they're Class Bs, is what I understand. I'm joining a canton here in a couple days on Monday, which is 3 days from now. And so I have already, made a purchase of my Class Bs. I'm going to get, I guess, a cap and a couple other things like that. And I will be putting together my full dress uniform. And I guess it will take a while because it's not something you can just order out of a catalog like you used to be able to. And you have to sort of build it, right?
You can order those, but you have to order the stripe that goes down your pant. You have to, and sometimes you have to get that sewn on in some cases. And as you go up through the ranks, you'll know this, you'll have to alter your uniform, change your patches. As you know, Bonnie, my wife, she served at the General Military Council on the national level for General Ken Laswell, who was Ken Laswell was the commanding general 2 years ago for that level, for the for the General Military Council.
So what are the ranks then for the canton?
The canton, well, you have various seats in the canton. The ranks could be, they used to have, like I said, remember we were talking about encampments? They used to have like sergeant majors, and so they used to have like an enlisted rank structure as well. And I actually have those uniforms in our museum. And we don't have those anymore, obviously. But there's several offices, several positions in the canton. And you could start anywhere like from ensign to lieutenant, and on your way up to captain, and then past captain. But it also within the canton, I learned something the other day too, what they used to call the chaplain. I took a picture working on this Civil War book again. They used to have brigade chaplains. So they, even on the brigade level, as you know, we're broken down in regiments and brigades, and that's what this book covers, by the way.
Nice.
In California, I know again, here I'm going off again, but to answer your question, there are several positions within a canton. Now each patch identifies you. You could be the clerk, you could be just the chaplain. Each patch would identify you as for that particular office. So in that regard, that would be like the Navy's equivalent to a rate, a rating. So you combine these both. So you're going to be wearing a patch. You're going to be wearing a rank insignia. You're going to be wearing all that. But
so then rank and office kind of go independently of each other then, yes?
Yes, yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes, and then you have the, and the basic, what you're going to be when you join is a Chevalier. We're
Mhm.
all, you're going to be a Chevalier. So if you don't hold any office and you're not holding any that ensign seat or that lieutenant seat or the captain seat, you're going to be a Chevalier.
Now, this also parallels with the swords, yes?
Yes. Well, the sword's a little different. In your canton, you're going to have a sword like this.
Right. As a matter of fact, I've already picked up myself one off of eBay. So let me show, mine. This one's
Wonderful.
it's pretty nice looking.
Yeah.
Very good shape.
Uh-huh. Very nice sword. You picked up a nice sword. And what you want to do, I didn't know if you had sword drill. Fortunately, I was a gunnery sergeant in the Marine Corps and went to the Staff NCO Academy where I learned about swords. And I know most of the odd fellows don't bother, but you should learn what the pommel is and what the hilt, those things, the grip, the blade. You have the whatever knuckle bow. You don't have it on this one, but some have them.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to learn those things. If you want to learn those things, somebody's going to ask you, because right now, for example, a few years ago when Canton 5 reactivated, we got that started. Bonnie led that effort. She started 2 cantons here in California.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, she just really got interested, and it is interesting. The more she became interested, believe it or not, I became interested. I was never interested in the canton. Then I'm moving myself up slowly, and I became the captain, past captain, but I never needed that. I was too busy being a grand master and a grand patriarch and a grand representative.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a director emeritus, so I was doing everything else. I don't need the canton, but you know what? Since reading about the history and learning, opening up these books, I really have a greater respect for the canton now. So these swords, several years ago when we were putting together the canton, we put an appeal out to members in the Patriarch Militant in the department. If you have any extra parts or swords, uniforms, anything, and Don Lang gave us about 8 broken swords. Missing parts
Yeah,
and
I
wore
think I'm
out.
actually missing a piece on. So this is another sword that I just picked up. You haven't seen this one, I don't think. But this one is the officer's sword, as you've mentioned to me. Now, on most of the officer swords that I've seen online, they typically have an etching
Yes.
on this part right here, but this one is blank. But the thing that I've noticed is that on the flip side where it says PM, the Patriarchs Militant, it seems like it might be missing something here. Would that be correct?
I look at ours. We have one in the museum. It could be. Yeah, it looks like it might be missing another flap,
Yeah.
another guard. So
Mm-hmm.
what we're gonna do is I'll take a look and see if we don't have too many officers' swords. We only have one in the museum, and I'll get it. I'm going to lead right into that.
Okay.
We ended up with these 8 sword parts, swords and scabbards, and so what we did is we took these swords and we cannibalized.
Mm-hmm.
We managed to put together 2 full swords.
Wow.
I had my friend who's a welder weld on the one just because of screw on the top where the pommel and the let me get that straight, where it screws down.
Mm-hmm.
We have a little crown at the top that sits
Yes.
on top of the pommel.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that part was missing, and the screw part was broken off. So my friend welded this the threaded part, and we were able to put it all together, and we ended up with one full sword. And the other one, we put together the entire sword as well. So we ended up with 2 full swords with scabbards out of those 8 parts.
Very nice.
So it's very important that cantons and members don't throw away, even if you just have a scabbard. It's very valuable to it. Even if you have this one little brass part or this ring, anything is valuable to. If you just have the sword, the blade, It's very important. Anything, any part, as you can see on your sword, you
Hmm.
need. So we were able to put together two, and since that time we had about four donated. So we maintain these in our canton. We give those to our canton. So our canton is built up. Plus, we purchased two more. So I think we have like 8 or 9 that are kept in our building
Hmm.
for meetings. So if we
Hmm.
ever want to practice a sword drill, we have these available. You don't always in our when we have our meetings, we don't have our swords out. It depends what you want to use them for. It's good to practice sword drill. I wasn't a good instructor because I'm more like disciplined. I'm too disciplined. You hold it 4 inches from your. But that's
Oh
what
yeah,
you should
no,
do. You
I
should
remember that.
learn you should learn the sword drill because when you reach the department level, I mean the General Military Council, if you
Hmm.
happen to attend one of those in another state, Bonnie, she she participated and so did Deborah Laverne, I think, and Mel Astrahan, members from our jurisdiction, attended and competed. This was the first time a couple of years ago. They have this. I have to ask Bonnie. I think she's here now, but I have to ask her what it's called. It's like a runoff, you
Hmm.
know. In fact, that off is used in it, where they have a sword competition, and you're given these beautiful badges, even for third place and second place. It's like going out to the shooting range. You know, you're given
Hmm.
this little badge to wear on your uniform. You have a tremendous. I'm going to call him a drill master in your canton. It would be uh, um, what's his name?
Will Schuyler, he, I
Bill
believe, is
Schuyler.
brigadier
Will
general, if I remember right. Yeah.
Yeah, he is. He is. He's proficient in the sword, and you can see when he wears his uniform, he has all these sword awards.
Hmm.
Well, you're lucky to have him because we don't have enough members like that in the canton teaching the sword drill who can probably teach it.
Hmm.
I mean, you can
Well,
know sword drill, but
I
you
could
have,
probably do that. I mean,
yeah,
a couple reasons why. I mean, I went to NCO school and learned how to drill with a sword. I was graded on that sort of thing, just like you were when you went to staff NCO school. And it's something that it takes a lot of hours to really get proficient at. But once you do it, it's unlikely that you're going to really forget it. It'll come back quickly, I think.
yeah.
And the other thing is that I have been working as an instructor of some sort for 20, 30 years now. So
So
I'm
you'll know
used to
how.
teaching people how to do things. And, I, I just need to avoid the temptation, like you were talking about being a little too uh,
Rigid.
proficient with people about it, uh, because people have different learning styles, and it doesn't always work to just try to teach people in one way. You have to kind of have an understanding of what will work to teach people. So there are a number of different ways of doing that. So I look forward to doing that, but I haven't joined my canton yet. I've got my swords, which is
Well,
exciting.
great. You're getting ready, and that's very
Mhm.
important. People come up and they don't have uniforms yet. They're in their civilian clothes, and so you do have to build it. It can be very expensive. It could be $700 putting together one of these things, piece by piece, and it's work to do that. And that's frankly, that's why we don't have a lot of people coming into that branch at one time because times aren't the best right now for
Now,
our members. But
um, question for you. Now, this is something that I'm really fascinated with this part. Now, I would like to get into discussing the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, visit, every year, and that's something that the Patriarchs Militant does by district. I assume it's district that they visit. But the other thing is that I understand that with the uniform, the Class A uniform for Canton, that I can wear my ribbons that I was awarded on active duty, military, right? That's
yeah,
correct?
any military ribbons of any branch you're
Hmm.
able. you can wear.
That's
You're
pretty
permitted to
cool.
wear.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Uh,
badges as well. So
mm,
I have an EOD badge, of course, and
get your
I have
crab.
I have about I would, you know why I don't wear those? Because there's a point I'm very respectful and I'm appreciative of every medal and award I've ever received. But, you know, I always kind of made jokes when I saw these guys. I usually post, if you ever seen these images of Russians,
Hmm.
you know, with
Oh
these
yeah.
uniforms go, oh, it's always become comical to me. And there was at one time, I recall officers were able just to wear their personal decorations in
Mhm.
some circumstances. I would like that, you know, to wear my personal decorations, which I have three, and leave the other ones aside because it's a lot easier to deal with, frankly. Inspection, because then you have to buy all those bars, and that's just as much time putting it together. It's an honor, though. I would do it
Yeah.
if I was asked to do it. But yeah, you are permitted to wear your government medals and badges.
Now,
Definitely. And it's
I
impressive.
I personally don't have what we used to jokingly call a fruit salad, you know, to wear. But uh, I've got a few rows of ribbons, which is great.
The
I
fruit
always enjoyed having those. It's not like I ever expected to retire and have a row after row of places that I've been and units that I've served with that have won awards, right? But yeah, those personal decorations are certainly far more um, personal, obviously,
all your
but they're more meaningful, I
I
think.
didn't mean any disrespect. No, I mean
No, 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 no.
even I was proud to go overseas too. So I of course I'd wear my overseas ribbon. Of course, you know. I was just saying it becomes a more work for. I don't want to say people have to wear them, you
Hmm.
know, but you're permitted to wear them.
Right. And you were in for I don't know how many years you were in the
20 years.
Marines. 20. Yeah, I was going to say.
I got an early out because I saved so much leave. I got about 19 and something, so I
Oh,
was
well, that's nice.
happy.
But I could certainly imagine that being in the military for as many years as you were, that there has to be a certain point where it's like dealing with ribbons just becomes a chore. So yeah, I don't know if you ever reach that point, but I could certainly understand it.
It does because during inspections, I wore this ribbon. I don't mean, again, no disrespect to any officers or inspectors.
Hmm.
I wore this ribbon I had, and I had come from overseas and Desert Storm, and I came back with quite a few ribbons, and I was getting awarded like every month another
Hmm.
ribbon, you know. And I'm in an inspection with a very general inspection in one of the squadrons, and it had a supply major inspecting all of us, and I was a staff, and I think I was still a staff sergeant at that time, and he steps in front of me, and he says, "Your ribbon is dirty." And I'm like, I just bought that. It's not dirty. You just don't know your ribbons. And
Hmm.
at that point, I realized that, and I would think I was 32 years old at that time, been in 14 years. I don't really want to be here, you know. But I still, I mean, I wanted to be with my guys in the ordnance field.
Well, yeah, and good for you for sticking it out. I mean, I reached my point at about 8 years, and I was like, I have had enough of the games, and I want to get on with my life
Get
instead
older.
of
You get
yeah.
older, and you got 18-year-olds next to you, or in the next platoon over, and you're all being talked to the same way, and
Hmm.
that's hard to deal with. And I hate to share that here with so many people, but
Well, no, 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 no.
that's
I
the
mean, look,
reality.
this the Canton, which by the way, synonymously we call it Patriarchs Militant. Yes,
Yes,
it's a military. You know,
collective cantons that
yeah,
create the department.
right. It's all military founded. It's that part of it is the same, and I would imagine that anybody who's been in Patriarchs Militant for a number of years, I'm sure that they enjoy it. I'm sure that there's probably a lot of really great things about it, but just like the military, I'm sure that there's times whenever it's like, oh gosh, we got to do this again, and it's like not it's not I don't have any experience with it, and I'm sure that it's probably a lot um, more relaxed than being in the military, at least.
Oh,
Uh,
very relaxed, and you're going to like it.
hmm
I
I'm
just,
sure.
and this is why I talked about that sword drill
Hmm
and the award, the competition. Most of our patriarch militants, they're unaware of it.
mm
They're unaware there's a huge general military council. If you go to the main convention in the United States, you go
hmm
there and you get to see this wonderful marching.
hmm
You get to see guys taking pride. You get to see them wearing all their medals. You get to see all those officers' swords. You learn so much. I learned so much in the last few years when Bonnie was going through it.
hmm
What's that green rope mean? What's that red rope mean? I didn't know that. Here I've been all these things and done all. I've been 30 years and I'm learning. I'm learning, and that's what I needed to do. And it gave me a greater appreciation for this order, because they're the people are dressed up, and
hmm
it's a nice level. You'll feel proud when you're at that level. It's an area of pride in this order. So
Yeah. Now.
you complete your degrees. Now
hmm
listen, if people only get the initiatory degree and stay a member, there's no requirement to get more, but you miss out on so much. You get the other 3 degrees, and all of a sudden you're in the Odd Fellows Lodge, you have all your degrees, and you think, well, I want to try the encampment degrees. And so you
hmm
get 3 more degrees, which are very easy, simple. Masonic degrees, I have 32, 33 actually, but 32 degrees, you can whip 10 of those off in one day.
hmm
They're very easy to do, and they're very easy to do in our encampment degrees
hmm
as well. And then you get the final degree, in the Patriarch Militant, universal justice. So that's a very important one. You get the entire aspect. And as you're going up, eventually you become a Noble Grand. You get the Grand Lodge degree, which you're going to be up for. And then you can get the Grand Encampment degree. Only takes a few minutes. And then you keep moving up. And if you keep moving up, you can be active in the Sovereign Grand Lodge level.
hmm
And so it depends how far you want to go in this order.
Right. And there's not a requirement. Like we're talking about sword drill and we're talking about, going all out with your uniform and all that. There's obviously a minimum level of participation. It's not like you're required to do all of these other things. So I think that it's great that it's like you can be a part of it and everything else after that is elective. So I think that's really a great aspect. Like, for example, going to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, which is something I alluded to earlier. So
Uh,
did you get to go to,
Many times, many
yeah?
times.
You want to talk about that a little bit? And then I know that this whole episode is really about swords,
let me let
but
me let's
go ahead.
interrupt this one second,
Sure.
while we're on swords. So
hmm
we want to keep a talk. Now we have this sword. We have the officer's sword that you have as well.
hmm
You have this one too.
Yes.
There's also swords that we see online that more are straight, flat, not as decorative, but they say IOF on those swords,
Right.
or they have FL and T, or sometimes you see the 3 links
hmm
on the handle, the grip, or
hmm
you see in various places. Those are from catalogs those are used in degrees.
hmm
So if a new person is coming in the order, they should know that sword is not used in the PM.
hmm
Okay, those are used primarily the first, second degrees of Odd Fellowship. The soldiers wear those during the degrees.
hmm
Those are Odd Fellow swords, and but they're not PM swords.
So their only
I don't have
function
one here.
is
If I was
in.
at our museum, I'd show you one.
Mhm.
Uh, I don't have one of those swords with me.
Well,
Uh,
I can pop a picture of one up right here.
okay.
Boom, there it is. So that's exactly what those swords look like. And but so then the point is those are only for conferring degrees, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the other thing, I know I spoke with you about this, or wrote about it. When I went to visit lodges, and lodges would ask me, well, what is this sword and what is that sword, and identifying things for they wanted to establish museums.
hmm
And what I would find, we were talking about the Civil War veterans coming in. What
Mhm.
I find, I came so far in this order, I've come across 4 lodges that had actual Civil War swords
Mm.
in their degree. So members
Hmm.
used to bring their personal swords and donate them to the lodge to be used during the degree work because the swords were expensive to buy out of catalogs.
Sure.
If you had a member in a home and say, hey, I've got these swords, but they came from the Civil War. One was presented to me when they found out how interested I was by the old San Leandro Lodge. They gave me one. And
Mm.
so I treasure that. I went to St. Helena. They asked me to look in their closet, and I, they're thinking these swords are the most valuable, you know, and that sword and the officer's sword. And I'm going through their swords, and then I remember saying, you see that sword there, all rusted and worn out. That
Mhm.
saber.
Mhm.
That's a Civil War sword. That's actually worth more than these combined.
Mhm.
So now I'm sure they treasure that sword. So it's interesting to be able to identify. So swords come in various styles, and they're there for different reasons. Your officer's sword's very important, and you may get that piece. I'm going to go look and see if I have a box of pieces
Okay.
as
Great.
well in our museum that we put things together to preserve them. We're going to take a look at that, but that's how you put your stuff together.
Mhm.
And that's mainly the coverage on swords.
Mhm.
Now going to the Tomb of the Unknown. The Tomb of the Unknown, I've been there several times. It's quite an honor. And while I'm there at Arlington or in Biloxi, Mississippi, you can go to either one now. That's they started that one 3 years ago, 4 years ago,
And
making
that's the Confederate Tomb of the Unknown
Confederate
Soldier. Yeah.
Unknown, and
Right.
that's done in February. I was there last year with Bonnie. We bestowed a wreath. Um, you have to look at that in a way of historical and honor those two aspects when you go to these places.
Mhm.
The Tomb of the Unknown, it's impressive to see our members. They're not allowed to bring the swords in Arlington, but they're allowed to come in. They're in full uniform. They march. They bestow the leaders bestow the wreath. I've had that honor myself when I was Grand Master. It's a wonderful thing to do. Bonnie did it as well. She represented our department here in California when our department commander could not attend. So we were able to do that as husband and wife. I actually have a picture of that on my phone.
Mm.
Maybe I'll send that to you. But we bestowed the wreath there, and that was really an honor. Now you do it from below the tomb. The tomb. You
Mm.
used to do it from the top, laying the wreath. Now you do it
Right.
from below because we lay so many as an order,
Mm.
one for each state
Yeah.
that we represent, and so it is quite an honor. You get to watch the honor guard, the changing of the guard. I was also fortunate to have a friend who is who was he's I think he's like number 510 or 511. There's badges for each
Mm.
tomb guard. There's less of those than there are astronauts.
Mm.
They work very hard in their uniforms. It's probably the only place in the Army they work so hard on their uniforms. Um, Coming from a Marine, as you know, that says a lot.
Yeah.
Guys are squared away, they're sharp, they know every uniform trick there is. I mean, I used to know the tricks, and as you do, we wore garters, we use safety pins, we use
Mhm.
pins, we use in our belts. I mean, everything. They know every trick. um, these guys are really good. But the gentleman I know is Ethan Morse, and he's a friend of mine, and he got to give me the ins and outs and on how that operates. But going back to the having our order there, it is a time of honor and it is a time of reflection. But I would encourage everyone to attend that event in Arlington because you can also get there early as a spectator, not necessarily a participant. And you could visit, like Audie Murphy's is buried just a few feet away from the amphitheater where
Mhm.
the where the Sovereign Grand Lodge and the GMC present their programs before they start the march to the tomb to present the wreaths. It's quite involved. I know I'm talking something you actually have to see it to understand it. The Tomb of the Unknown in Biloxi, Mississippi, that's quite an honor as well. Very reverent, very, you get to learn about the historical aspects of the war, and you get to respect those who have died as well. It's a good balance because, as you know, we started off in this program, our order's diverse. We have members of the South, we have members in the North, and members of all walks of life and all beliefs, and we have to respect that. And so if they want to do that down in the South, that's fine. They want to do that back there in Arlington, that's fine. It's quite an honor. I would encourage members to get out and do that. Any activity like that in this order is encouraged.
Yeah, and I've actually heard that there are some odd fellows that get involved with retiring flags, you know, and doing those sorts of things with, because, you know, you can't just simply throw an American flag away. You know, you have to properly dispose of it. Have you heard much about that sort of thing? I mean,
I've heard that. I know Ventura, I know lodges have been involved in that. Oddfellows take part in that as well. You know, they team up with the American Legion, who disposes flags. They burn them, but they're burned in a very
That's a ceremony.
Yeah. I don't know. The word naturally disrespectful comes out of me as a Marine, but it's very respectful.
Yes.
You know, anytime I see a flag, and that's a person's personal preference, and but it's if you see it done as a former vet, as a vet, it can be taken a certain way.
Right.
I would like to read the obligation. This might be of interest to anybody watching this. This was the obligation written in 1889.
And for anybody who doesn't really know what the obligation is, like somebody's not an odd fellow, you want to explain what an obligation is?
Obligation is like attesting to your honor.
Isn't it more like an oath?
Yeah, it's an oath.
Okay.
You're swearing to uphold certain things. You're putting your word. You're giving your word to do X, Y, and Z. You know, each obligation is different, as you're going to see here. Now, the obligation then is not the same as it is today. Now, again, this is written about 140 years ago. So 131 years ago, 32 years ago. So you would say, I state your name. And so you would say your name with my approved free will and accord before these living noble witnesses, do thus voluntarily promise and obligate myself to defend maidens, wives, widows, and orphans in their rights, to relieve the distress, to permit no extortion so far as I may be able to prevent it, to support those who are weak and powerless to maintain their rights, and to administer justice to the advancement of honor and the suppression of vice, all of which I, in this presence, do avow it my purpose and intention to perform to the uttermost bounds of human ability, under penalty which shall be no less than degradation caused by the loss of my personal and military honor. Now that's quite impressive. I wish we did the same obligation today. Can you imagine society? We'd be out there swatting people with our swords all over the place. And anyway, I thought that was interesting.
Defending the honor of maidens. That's quite a chivalrous thing to do.
And that's what we are. We're chevaliers. So anyway, this book is fantastic. In the back of this book, I wonder if I never really looked for swords, but there. Oh yeah, here's swords.
Oh, we should probably also point out. Yes, yeah. That's the officer's sword. Yeah, Should probably also point out that besides the Independent Order of Odd Fellows having swords, I've seen several Grand United Order of Odd Fellows swords as well. So whenever you're looking at them on eBay, you look for if it says GUOOF or IOOF on them. Yeah, so that's the regular sword. Yeah.
That's a regular sword. Here's some we talked about enlisted ranks. I know we have some. Oh, here's something. Here's the uniform. They also had banners as well.
Hmm.
Hey, cool.
Nice.
This is the Patriarchs Militant back then were another one.
Wow.
This book is full of these wonderful plates. Full
Huh.
of them. So yeah, the swords, here's some of the caps. Field regimental staff.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
We have
okay.
a few different ones in our museum.
Mm-hmm.
Those. Sorry about that. I should
No,
have.
that's all right.
It'd be hard to get these to you, but you get an idea. And then you
Mhm.
have awards within the order, which
Yeah, I was going to say that you were showing somebody that was on horseback that had a banner that had this, white cross, and in the middle of the white cross was a heart. Was it a heart?
yeah.
I know that that one is a particular award.
So you have Major General Division.
Mm-hmm.
You have headquarters.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many different types of plates. This doesn't do it justice, but they're
Mm-hmm.
plate after plate. Then it goes into the state flags,
Mm-hmm.
jurisdictional flags.
Hmm.
Like I said, here's Canton from Louisville, Kentucky. See, Louisville,
Very
Kentucky.
nice.
You'll see these banners. We still have a banner for California, but these banners were quite colorful, as the members were in their uniforms. Then they broke it down to how they march, how they drill. A little different in the service. This is the colors, the Patriarch Militant colors. This is what our flag would look like
Mm-hmm.
right here.
Yeah. And I was going to say they probably don't have much uh, horseback mounted
I
Patriarchs
haven't seen
Militant
that yet,
anymore.
but they did. At
They
one time,
did.
it's evident they did because it was in this book.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the benefit of being a historian and reading. Uh, I just really get into that, and I would recommend the book. And I've heard other members do it as well. Written by James Ridgely. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I would recommend that book the best.
Mm-hmm.
But the history of Odd Fellowship. That's a pretty good book. It really talks about the beginning of Odd Fellowship and the creation of the encampments, the lodges, the degrees, how they were established, the breakaway from the Manchester Unity
Mm-hmm.
in the 1840s, and the reasons for that. What didn't have anything to do with blacks in the order. It had nothing to do with that. So it's just understanding the history of our order.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is an important thing to talk about swords, though. I'm going to go back to one more thing about swords. Saved all the parts again. I can't emphasize that enough. Swords right now, I'll give you the cost. As you've been shopping around, you can get a decent Oddfellows sword around the range of $150 to $200. The regular PM sword.
Mm-hmm.
The officer's swords, you showed me one the other day. You don't get those too often.
Mm-hmm.
Those don't come up too often. I know. I think that started at $299.
$299. Yeah.
That is probably if you're getting it under 400, 500. I think that's probably the ballpark for getting a new. If you wanted to get the old kind with an
Mm-hmm.
ivory handle,
Mm-hmm.
if you're getting a used one with an ivory handle, that's the ballpark. Ivory's
Mm-hmm.
very expensive, original ivory.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, to have it made would be illegal.
Right. Yeah.
So Um,
And just as an FYI, I typically shop hard on eBay. So my regular Patriarchs Militant sword that I actually got it for $66.
then you got to steal. You
Yeah.
got a great steal because that
Yep.
goes in range around 150.
Hmm.
But you can find them for, like I said, cheaper. Look around. But if you ever see a group of sword parts, for $100 you get 8 sword parts, and scabbards, and sometimes you ask your canton or members, hey, can we put together and get all this stuff? And then you're still appealing to people and to get other things and other parts. Continually do that. You'll never know when one little part comes in handy. I have a sword right now. I just need the top part. I need this little crown right here.
Hmm.
Right
Yeah.
here. Taking it off. It's so easy to take these apart and to clean them.
Hmm.
We need this part right here.
Uh-huh.
Then
Gotcha.
you need this little crown here.
Hmm.
You could need, and it all sits on this little screw I was talking about. My friend welded one day. These get welded on, so these can be repaired.
Hmm.
And each part breaks down, and this is how you clean it. Anyway,
Well, I want to begin wrapping things up with this conversation. I'm really glad that you have taken the time to do this. Now, you did tell me that there is a particular story about a sword. Would you like to relay that story before we wrap things up?
it just dealt with the Civil War sword. We had one in our museum. I was showing a gentleman, a member, a Noble Grand of California Lodge Number 1 here in San Francisco that started in 1849. Uh, he took he wanted to create a museum and start knowing about the things they had in their closet.
Mm-hmm.
Large closet full of Oddfellows memorabilia and items, and he wanted to learn more. And it turned out he was giving me a lesson and on swords, and he was a sword expert, and he's the one who turned me on to uh, Civil War swords. You see that sword right there? That's a Civil War sword, and that's quite valuable. And he told me about being a saber, and this was carried by an officer, and he knew a lot, and that's where I learned a lot. So the more you share, the more you learn. Writing books gives me a lot of feedback. So what I learn in books and doing the research, I get about 10% back in feedback where I'm filling in the holes. So I get a great understanding of this order. That's what he was doing for me.
Mm-hmm.
And his name was Chris Zeck.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Zeck, brothers Chris Zeck. I had to make sure. I'm not sure if that was him or his last name, but I had to check with his member, and that's the name he assured me. But I remember his name being Chris, and so whatever that guy gave me a lesson on swords, and I was able to learn and be open-minded when you do this stuff. And not to you, but I know you're open-minded. I am definitely.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody has something to tell you, don't take it as they're trying to better you. Take that knowledge and build upon it. And it's very useful when you're trying to learn history, you're trying to learn everything. When people tell me what to do, or I mean, not about things, I listen.
Mm-hmm.
And I thank them because I learned something more, and learn about these swords, because you don't want to end up buying I don't know, a Knights of Pythias sword, thinking you could use it in the Oddfellows. You might be able to use it to practice drill, but you want to know what sword you're going to get, and ask somebody else, ask one of us, and hopefully this will help you. Again, this is the main sword you want to get if you're going to join a canton.
Right.
Sword.
And that's I think this is like a leather part that is wrapped in
plastic too.
Plastic, yeah?
Yeah, this is plastic here.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say mine's leather.
This is not going to fall apart or rot. But
Right.
if you get leather, use a little leather oil or mink oil.
Right.
Take care of your sword. Constantly clean it. Bonnie cleans hers. And
yeah, I need to polish mine
Usually
quite
you
a
get
bit.
old ones with names on them. They're used. They used to
Hmm.
engrave the names. The
Yeah.
blades are beautiful. They have all our symbols.
Hmm.
And these, the parts again. Brother Mel Astrahan showed me something. Some swords uh, have a little tiny cameo, and I never seen it at the base of the scabbard on the what they call the drag, the
Now,
tip.
is that on the officer sword or the?
You know, it's on a few swords. I guess it depended. It depended on which uh, company or catalog you had purchased your sword
I have
from.
an acorn on mine.
Oh, you do. I'm talking about a regular separate ivory color device that would sit in there about the size of, I'd say, a quarter inch. That
Yeah,
would
this
actually be
has a whole
glued in. Yeah, that's it.
or
It would sit in there in that
ah,
spot. And
huh,
here, this one, you see this one here?
yeah.
This one here doesn't. It has little little lines in it, so they put a
Oh,
sign in there.
yeah.
So they're all a little different. It all depended which manufacturer you purchase, which catalog you purchase your sword, but they're all acceptable. They're all
Hmm.
PM swords.
This one,
Yours yours would
this
have a
one
little,
doesn't have it.
but
There's
yours
no
would have
little
a
window.
yours would in that window would have a little cameo,
Hmm.
little ivory cameo that you could set in there. Mel Astrahan actually has several of those.
Hmm.
So if you're able to, I know you know Brother Mel, if you're
Hmm.
able to contact him and hey, say Pete Sellers told me about a cameo, it's not too common to
Hmm.
see that, and it's probably not common knowledge. And but you pick up things like that. You learn from things like that.
Hmm.
When somebody tells you about something, it just gives you another aspect about these swords. But know that you still have the right sword. This is the right sword if you don't have the cameo, because at that time, and we collect catalogs from the 1800s, there were hundreds of companies selling different types of swords,
Hmm.
but they would create this Oddfellow sword, but there'd be little variations.
Right. Now, I would imagine that uh, most of those swords that you're talking about were uh, not ones that you could actually cut things with, right? I know that there was a certain point whenever they started selling swords that they do not have a sharp edge. So
Listen, uh,
the old ones have a sharp edge?
and believe it or not, now I'm not an expert here, but
Hmm.
when speaking to Chris, he said the officers' swords were dull in the Civil War. They did more damage.
Hmm.
Believe it or not, I don't. We're watching movies with sharp edges, and but he said in the war, most of the swords were dull.
Hmm.
He said they would do more damage just hitting you and killing you with that sword.
Hmm.
They can knock you down. They could do more damage. Said swords, that just because the blade is dull doesn't mean it wasn't used in the war.
Hmm.
And I got that from this Civil War sword expert.
Hmm.
So there's another aspect. I'm glad.
Hmm.
Great question. Great question. See, I learned something, and I can actually attribute it to somebody who told me. And if a sword expert tells me that, and then I'm going to believe them. So I'm sure other people have validated that as well.
All right. Well, listen, Peter, I don't know if there's anything you want to say in closing before I invite everybody to hit the subscribe button. But you want to go ahead and say something to wrap up?
I just want to say thank you for allowing me to share some of the knowledge that I have locked up in here and bring out books that I have from my library. And I just really enjoy talking about history, and it just renews it and solidifies it for me. I learned from this discussion as well.
Hmm. Well, thank you. And I always appreciate having you on because you've got such a depth of knowledge. It's always really great, hearing your stories that you learn from your research, that people wouldn't otherwise, know those because they're kind of locked away in those books of all those, you know, uh, old minutes of different, Grand Lodges and Sovereign Grand Lodge and all that sort of stuff in the history book. So, you're a font of knowledge for sure.
Thank you.
So thank you for taking the time to be on this
Pleasure.
podcast with me. And again, just a reminder, if you're watching this and you really like this podcast, please subscribe and share it with your friends. So thank you, Peter, and thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Thank you. Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you.